All right, this is a quick video to show you how to do a recording with Reaper at Faith Community Church with the current setup that we have with the Avantis mixer. In the front of house booth, there are two small computers on the small rack that's under the desktop. They work and run together to record everything coming off the mixer, the broadcast mix, and the front of house mix. The reason we use two computers is because we can't record everything that we might need to record on one computer with the version of Dante Virtual Sound Card, which only is limited to 64 channels in at a time. I want this to be a fairly quick how-to video, just how to get it done. So let me get started. So what we need to do is log into both computers. So this is the first one. And you can switch between them with using a little button that's on the top of the rack for a KVM switch. But once you log into whichever computer, you can see up there the name of the computer, you can see what drives are there. And you could do that without having to go into File Explorer. But I will go in there just to show you a little more detail. The C drive is the internal drive, as is the D drive. The E drive is probably where we're going to want to record to. That's going to be an external drive. Everything's going to go into that folder right there. Those drives look like this, by the way, and we do try to keep one of them there at all times. So if you do take one, please return it ASAP. But typically, I'm the one taking them home. You also have the option to record to the internal D drive. There's a Dig Audio folder in there, so if the drive isn't there, you just don't want to mess with it, you can record to that and then bring your own drive and copy the files that you record off to your drive and take those with you. And we can see in the top right that the free space on the D drive is 240 gigabytes. You got plenty of space. So let's click that KVM button and switch to the other computer, which has a message that looks like that. Pretty similar. It's the same login. And this is the really tiny computer on the right. There's no drive hooked up to it. It only has the internal drive, but you can confirm the name up there. It ends in a 1. So that's the second computer because I'm a computer guy and we count it starting at 0. Right, so just bear with me there in that regard. But we're going to record to the internal C drive to that FCC folder down there because we're only recording a couple of tracks. So that's what you're working with here. So let's click back to the other computer. And one thing I try to do before I actually start the recording is to check the status of the network. I want to make sure I'm getting a gigabit network bandwidth throughput on both computers. So if I launch Dante Controller down there, when it comes up, I can click the network status right there. And what I want to look at is these two computers right there, the bottom two right now. Make sure they're both at 1 gigabit per second. If either of them is not that, go ahead and boot that computer and then come back and check. But everything looks good now, so let's start Reaper and get it set up to record what we want to record today. With Reaper, we take the approach that we're going to show you initially everything that you could possibly want to record off the mixer. And you can see that down below in the bottom half on the mixer control panel and also up on the top half, the track control panel. And those two areas will stay in sync with each other. If you see a kick drum channel up above, you'll also see one down below. So they're running parallel. But go to Extensions, SWS S&M, Snapshots, and click that third row that says FCC MT Recording, Multitrack Recording. That'll make sure all the tracks are set up the way they need to be for a multi-track recording, like so. And then once that's been done, go to View, Track Manager. Now this controls what we see in the window behind. And what we want to do, because we have everything that we could possibly want to record enabled, is turn off all the things that we don't need by getting rid of the dots in that column there. And so let's say it's a typical band week. What we're going to do is we're going to go down and turn off all the things that we're not going to use. So typically floor tom 2 we don't do, no percussion, bass guitar 1. Now don't use bass guitar stereo, but for electric, if I'm playing, typically it is stereo these days. So just follow this right here. And then we're going to have a piano and keyboard 1 as the synth. And what we can do is just click and drag, right? We don't have to poke each one, but if we want to get rid of a whole swath, we can just slide right down like that and get rid of them. We're going to have 4 singers, so vocals A through D, no group mics, no room mics, and no speech mic. And so that looks good for what we've been doing lately for a typical band. So you can close that, and you see what that's done. That's now reflected in the mixer on the bottom half and the track control panel on the top half. So now that we have this slimmed down to just what we need to record, go to the track control panel on the top, click any track, and then Control-A to select them all, then Control-click SMPTE to unselect it. Once you've got it looking like that, click any of the A buttons, and that will arm for recording all those tracks. Go up to File, Save Project, and we're going to be in that Dig Audio FCC. Look at the date. It's the 27th. The naming convention that we use is year, month, date. So today's 2025, 0227, A for AM, P for PM. And make sure that create subdirectory for project is checked. Click the save button. That'll save it. The project is saved. Anything we record will go into that folder. So let's hit the button to go to the other computer. And over here, when we launch Reaper, we're going to see something a little bit different. This is a computer that just records front of house, broadcast, and if we're using a click track. So when it comes up, you're just going to see these 3 tracks. And that's all this computer is going to do for us, is track these 3. But we haven't been using the click lately, so you can disable the arming and the recording of the click track by clicking the red A button. It'll turn white. And then just go to File, Save Project. We're going to use a slightly different naming convention here. It's still year, month, day, and then A or P, but then add underscore MTR1. That just lets me know that this is a different project from the other computer. Checkbox is checked. Click Save. And you're ready to go. Now remember, this computer works in conjunction with the other computer. And it's set up to chase to timecode is what it's called. So that SMPTE track we saw on the other computer, it's going to send that over to this computer. So when you click record here, this lovely red box is going to sit there. And that's telling you that it's waiting for that SMPTE timecode. So button on over to the other computer, which is still all set up, ready to go. When you get close to the beginning of the service, 15 minutes before, 10 minutes before, go ahead and click the record button. And you'll see up above in the track control panel, the waveforms are starting to render, being recorded. Now, there's nobody here, right? I'm doing this by myself, but you'll see the meters bouncing. And note that SMPTE, I'll just call it because it's easier, that's sending the time code to the other computer. And they're running in perfect sync. And the reason we have to do this, remember, is that we've got so many potential channels coming in from the Avantis and the broadcast mix, front of house mix, that we don't have enough inputs through Dante Virtual Sound Card on one computer. So the 2 computers together can get everything we need, all in perfect sync, and then I can merge these at home later on, and everything will line up. It's really pretty slick. So just leave this running till the end of the service. You pretty much don't need to do anything until the end, but there is one thing you can do for me, is pay attention to see if the speaker, the person giving the sermon, coughs, and if they do, press M, and that'll drop a marker where the cough happened. It doesn't need to be exact, but that'll tell me that I need to go back and listen to what happened there and edit something out, like the cough. And if it happens again, press the M again. So there's another marker. And so what I'll do when I get home is when I'm doing the sermon, I'll look to see if there are any markers. I'll give it a listen, and then I can cut those out. Makes things a lot nicer in the end. People don't have to hear that if they listen to the recording, and I don't have to sit there all afternoon to try and find them. So thanks for doing that if it happens. But otherwise, you pretty much just leave this running from before the beginning of the first service to just after the closing song of the second or last service. And when we're done, click stop. And then we need to save everything one last time, so you can do save project and quit, or just quit. I kind of like doing that because that'll prompt you and you can say yes to the save project question. And that shuts down Reaper and makes sure everything's written to the disk. And then button over to the other computer and notice it stopped running because it no longer is receiving that time code. So it stopped. And all you need to do there is the same thing. File, save project if you want, but quit, and then answer yes to the question there is easier. And that'll do the same thing over there. Now there's one last thing we need to do. What this has done on the small computer on the right, it's created that folder that has these files in it. We need to get those over to that hard drive that's hooked up to the other computer. So in order to do that, button over to the other computer, the MTR0 computer, and open File Explorer. This O drive, you'll notice, is mapped to the MTR1 computer. So if you expand that down to DigAudio FCC, there's our project that we created on the other computer. What you need to do is move that to the E drive on the current computer, which is the external drive. So you can drag it over and then press the Shift key, and that'll switch to moving it, and it'll move the files over. Now, this was a very short session. It maybe takes a minute or two, but now I've got both sessions from both computers on that E drive, and I can take that home with me and do what I need to do. And with that done, it's time to wrap this up. So what I ask is that you come back to each computer and you sign out. Okay, do not shut the computers down, but do the sign out procedure on both. Back to the other computer, do the same thing, sign out just like that, and I'll come back there if I'm not already back there and swap out the drive so I can take the one that you recorded to with me.